it's harder to find a low mileage 1995 Toyota Camry than it is to find a 95 Ferrari 348 with no miles on it.
Andrew, you have a real knack for finding crazy low mile examples of maybe not even like super sporty or interesting cars, but just like I told Alex I wouldn't, if I used the word unicorn more than once on this podcast, I would have to buy him something nice.
That's once, Howard. If it comes twice, you owe me dough.
But you do seem to uncover and discover these cars. So Alex and I would love to know like what's your process for that? I mean, I'd forgotten that an Acura even made an SLX.
Same.
8-mile Dodge Dakotas and no-mile Buick LaCrosses and a million of things in between. So talk a little bit about your thought process around discovering those cars and bringing them to market.
So I try and find cars that, like you just said, people forgot existed, that when they see it, they're like, oh my God, crazy, I remember that car. Or cars that everybody had, but drove until they fell apart. So Honda Civics, Ford Explorers, Toyota Camrys. It's harder to find a low mileage 1995 Toyota Camry than it is to find a 95 Ferrari 348 with no miles on it. People don't drive Ferraris, they don't drive Porsche, maybe a BMW. But find like a low mileage 97 Ford Expedition with 8,000 miles. That's a unicorn. It's insane. It makes no sense. It defies logic. Who bought this car and didn't drive it? So the question of how do we find them? We look everywhere, and often people find us. Unfortunately, we find people in some situations where a loved one maybe passed away and had no plan for their 150 cars. And it's not easy to sell 150 cars to one person. You know, you're doing one at a time, two at a time. It becomes a full-time job. So we make that sale really easy for the seller. People often think we steal the cars we buy. We don't. I lose money all the time. I just want to own whatever's weird, nostalgic, and different. So I don't have a list of cars I look for. We just look for anything that's either in exceptional condition or has crazy low miles. You want to hear the story about the Dodge Dakota? This is a pretty funny story. I'll tell it to you in a nutshell.
Yes, tell.
So one of my buyers found this 8-mile Dakota RT on Facebook Marketplace. Start talking to the guy.
Are you skeptical when you see that? Like already you got to be like, oh, something's wrong here, right?
You know, and that's another question I'm asked often. When you've done this for as long as I have, so I've been doing this for 20 years dealing with private sellers, in the first 10 seconds, I can tell if I'm buying your car or not. Oh, it was title in your name. No, it's in my uncle's name and he's fighting in Iraq. You know, God bless America. He's out there on the front line, but don't worry. He signed the title already and it was my dad's car. Okay, I'm done. I'm out. Thank you. So when you talk to somebody, you know,
Howard's laughing. We've heard those stories a few
I've heard the craziest stories you could possibly imagine, like absurd. Like I wish I recorded them and made a TV show just out of the story part. So my buyer conferences me on the line. He's like, you know, meet such and such. His name's Rodney. Rodney's a corn farmer in the middle of Indiana, outside of Richmond, Indiana. And his dad was obsessed with Dodges to the point that he would go buy Dodges, drive them home, and never drive them again. He would just leave them. Unfortunately, he left a lot of them in barns that weren't watertight. Mice got to a lot of the cars, and they were. You know, I actually flew to Indiana because I'm like, I need to just see this for myself.
Right, maybe there's a few other treasures in there, huh?
Yeah, I'm like, you know, if this guy's not really sure what he's telling me, he's not sure if it's a V8 or V6, I better just like go see for myself. I go there. It is literally middle of nowhere. I lost cell phone service. My wife thought I was kidnapped. It's apparently also like there's a lot of drug trade that goes on in this area. So I go in. I was mind blown. He turns on the lights, and I'm like, oh my God, like this is just crazy. 30-mile trucks, 10-mile trucks, 50-mile trucks. And then he's like, oh, you haven't even seen it yet. I'm going to take you to what we call the museum. I'm like, all right, now we're talking. So we go into the other barn, and that one is like hermetically sealed, climate controlled, and it is just one after the next. He had a 1990 Rod Hall pickup truck I never knew existed. Turned out being the rarest Dodge ever produced. He made 33 of them. It's a collaboration between Carroll Shelby and Rod Hall. Carroll Shelby had a heart attack. They stopped producing them. And the lowest mileage one known to exist had 8,000 miles, and that was since the mid-90s. This truck had 900 miles on it. And I was just like, all right, what do we need to do to get these trucks the heck out of here?
It was a Dakota? What was it based on? I've never heard of that either.
A Ram Power 150.
Wow.
It had a different transfer case, different suspension, light bar. It's a super cool truck.